All right. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Grooming with Humanery. And today we have a very special guest with us. It's Patrick Kidd, the founder of Patrick's, the cult brand for men's grooming. And we've been trying to make this happen for over a year, haven't we?
Yeah.
But it's not very often that Patrick's in the United Kingdom. He lives in beautiful Sydney. And we're going to cover everything about Patrick's origin story, talk about his cult products, and some other stuff about how Patrick's fits into the lifestyle of the modern man. And, you know, everyone who's experienced these products will know how amazing these products are. And the entire range is available for sale at humanery.com. So let's get right into it. Patrick, welcome, and thanks for being here, man.
Mate, thank you for having me.
It's amazing to have
Appreciate
you.
it. It's a nice warm intro as well. I like it.
I like good.
Cult brand.
Yeah,
that works for me.
It is a cult brand.
Yeah. Really
speaking the truth
massaging
here.
my ego over
Lovely,
here.
lovely. Good to hear.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's actually start with your origin story, Patrick. So what led to the creation of this brand, and how did you get started?
And for anyone who's probably heard this story 1,000 times, I'll try and keep it brief. But yeah, it's a different tack for me. Like, I was an electrician for a long time, like 10 years. And then about 20 years ago now, I opened up like a men's hair salon in Sydney, in Bondi.
From doing like electric
Yeah. So I was an electrician for like 10 years, and then I was actually living over here in the UK for 3 years, and I met my wife, and man, I hated being a sparky, or we call it a sparky, as an electrician. Yeah. I just hated it. I was too kind of, I don't know, I felt like a caged animal doing that stuff. It was good money, but it was like, it just wasn't my thing. And then I had the idea of like, the common thing was that I was just sick of getting terrible haircuts. You know what I mean? It was either cheap barbershops or women's salons that didn't want to do guys. And if you asked for any kind of like, you know, crazy haircut, you just couldn't get it, or it was just a weird time. So we ended up opening this sort of concept store, which was like a hairdressers for men kind of thing, more
and
so
that was
than
here
a barbershop.
in the UK?
No, this is in Sydney. In Bondi.
Yeah.
And man, and it was like $60 for a haircut, which, you know, 15, 16, 17 years ago, whatever it was a lot of money. But it was like so we were the first licensed hairdressers in the country. So we actually had a bar. We had a full like sort of cafe style coffee thing. You know, it was a big place. We had deals with Ducati, so they used to put in new bikes every couple of weeks. We had Lamborghinis in there. Like, we had, I think at one point we had 25 staff. So it was a big op. But we had hairdressers and then taught them how to do fades and stuff. So rather than traditional kind of barbers that weren't that great with scissors, it was more like we'd pinch Tony and Guy's stuff and teach them how to do barbering, and then we'd sort of go from there. And then that took off. Like, it went crazy, you know. Like, but it was a niche group of guys. It was, you know, you could get a haircut for $5 at the time, or ours was 60. But it was a real like experience, and people would come in and, you know, leave their coats and have a few drinks and, you know, like get a really good haircut. And then from that, we were basically just trying to find a high-end product to sell in the store that sort of matched the service that we were providing.
Right.
And at the time, we were using American Crew. Kevin Murphy had sort of come out in the later years, but we scoured the earth trying to find a brand just to sell in the store, because it was an expensive haircut. So we were like, let's give him like the best kind of product, and couldn't find one. So in the end, we were like, let's just do it ourselves. You know, I felt like I knew what the demand was, and what people would pay, and what the weaknesses were in other brands. And we kind of went from there. We tried to develop it in Australia for about 2 years, and just we couldn't get any of the labs to get the formulas kind of anywhere near the levels of performance that we wanted them to be at. And then Amy actually found a place in Miami who had done an equity deal with Tony and Guy years and years before.
Right.
And we didn't have that much money or anything, so it was kind of like, if we could get these guys to do maybe an equity deal with us, we could get into because the big labs don't want to talk to you, right? So like, for anyone who's watching who wants to start their own brand or whatever, the hardest part is getting the big labs to work with you, because they just don't want to work with startups, because you know, 99 times out of 100, maybe 999 times out of 1,000, the brand never gets to market. You know what I mean? It's always an idea or a concept that doesn't really make it. So they spend a lot of time and money developing these products that most of the time never get released.
Right, so they want to cut their risk.
Exactly, So they just don't answer calls or emails or anything like that.
So
that kind of forced us to jump on a plane and go to Miami and knock on the door. And man, as literally as luck would have it, the guy who kind of ran the place walked down the stairs, and I'd left him so many voicemails, he kind of picked up on the accent and knew who I was. And I asked him for 5 minutes and just said, look, man, give me five minutes, and if you don't like the concept or whatever, and he's like, I kind of know the concept, man, you've told me 50 times. And then we ended up like in their sort of meeting room for, I was like 3 or 4 hours, and then got that they loved it. They loved the idea. They hadn't done anything like it.
Yeah.
And, you know, they did some of the biggest brands on the planet.
Yeah.
And then they invested in the business. And then they, basically after that, they got on a plane with us and went to Chicago to then introduce us to a packaging company who, for us, the good bit too was that they did free design work in exchange for a manufacturing contract. So it meant that I'd sort of already designed the styling product packaging and the shampoos and conditioners, but I didn't have it in CAD, and then I didn't have molds, and otherwise you've got to pick kind of between sort of standard packaging and custom packaging, right? And custom packaging looks so much better on the shelf. It gives you a massive point of difference straight away. Right. But it's really expensive compared to just off-the-shelf stuff, which you can change colorways and graphics and things like that. But ours was like way different. So anyway, that saved us probably another $500,000 just doing that. But you do get locked into a manufacturing contract. But if the brand goes well, then you kind of
it's a good thing
for
to
you,
do,
right?
Yeah.
And then it all kind of kicked off from there. So then we tested the products in the store for like 4 years or 3.5 years, just to make sure that they were like really dialed in. And they were. And you know, doing 300-400 guys a week, you get really honest, good feedback from the guys. Yeah. So we knew
so it's very well road tested.
I mean, probably too long if you ask the lab. But then the other thing, I think what we did, which people like, and we're not, you know, ashamed to say it or like scared to say what we did. We didn't like reinvent the wheel. I feel like we just did everything better, and that's how. And people can take it as arrogance or whatever, but like it's everything we do with the brand, like every aspect of it, every single thing. Is as good as we can do it. You know what I mean? Or
it has to be first class.
Has to be the best. Yeah. Whether it's packaging, the materials that the packaging are made out of, the fonts. Like I'm obsessed with Helvetica and you know, Accidents Grotesque and all this sort of stuff we use, and it's all capitals, which like people hate, but I love. I just like the look of it. You know, then the products themselves, like we use like the best hair loss sort of actives that you can get. We use, you know, and obviously the performance is probably the main thing, but that was tested for so long, we kind of know that works. And then the fragrance, like the first, you know, a lot of people like unfragranced stuff, but you know, the first thing that everyone does is they open it and smell it all the time. And so then we were like, all right, well, what do guys generally like? And they like fragrances that are, you know, colognes. So we picked kind of 10, 12 colognes that I liked, and then we developed like similar fragrances to those and built those into the products. And then the packaging was a whole other kind of world that we won more awards for the packaging than the products originally. Because it kind of looked so different. But everything it was super functional, and it still is. You know, everything's got 2 locks, and because it's expensive, it's designed to, you know, to be traveled with. So nothing's going to leak in your bag, and you know, and I'd had experiences where I'd bought, you know, back in the day, like a Tom Ford moisturizer, and I love Tom Ford, but I bought a moisturizer in New York. It was like $180 or something. At that time, there was a lot of money, you know, and it still is. And I put it in my bag and went back to Sydney, and the thing just blew apart. And I was like, surely Tom Ford in all his wisdom
should have thought about that.
Knows that like someone's going to travel with this thing, right? Like, because it's expensive, and that's their target market. And the packaging was just so poorly designed. Like good product, and I like I said, I love Tom Ford. But there's just no thought given to like the functionality or the usage of the product. Which we went really hard on in the beginning. And yeah, man, the rest is kind of history. You know? Like we launched it with, rather than, the other thing that we did a little bit differently was we still don't do salons and barbershops, which seems crazy for a hair care brand. But there's a real hierarchy.
Let's double click, meaning as in you don't have your own barbershops anymore?
No. So as soon as the product kind of took off, because I mean, there's a lot more to it than that. Like I actually went back to school and did like an advanced diploma of corporate finance, so I could raise money for myself for the business. Because it's cool it is, you know, to start your own brand and all that sort of stuff, especially in cosmetics or cosmeceuticals or whatever you're doing, or hair care. It's so expensive, man. Like, you know, your minimums are $25,000 to $50,000 depending on what the product is. Some of the products are like $30 to produce. You know what I mean? You times that by 50,000, and that's just the formula. Then you got the packaging, and then you got the shipping, and then so you need millions of dollars to get a brand like off the ground. Kind of thing. But what we were kind of fortunate enough to sort of have was a bunch of guys that were paying a lot of money for a haircut, that had money. They usually had a little bit of spare money. So I was testing the products on these guys for, you know, 3 or 4 years, and then just raised money off those guys. So we were like, look, hey, you know what we're doing, you know the gap, you know how good it is. And we did a capital raise and raised $250,000 for 10% of the business. So it was a 2.5 mil valuation. This is Aussie dollars.
Yeah.
To begin with, and there was nothing more complicated than I was happy to give away 10% of the business at that stage.
Yeah.
So that we needed 250, so then the valuation became 2.5.
Yeah.
And then once we developed the products, then I raised another $500,000 and we just doubled it, so it was like a 5 mil valuation.
Yeah.
And then once it launched, and that's again something that we did quite differently, where rather than there's a real hierarchy in stores and stuff, and I'm sure everyone knows it, right? And I'm not letting the cat out of the bag.
Mm-hmm.
But, rather than going into sort of barbershops to salons to chemists to, maybe your Sephora's or whatever, and then into department stores and Selfridges and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
We kind of went the opposite. So we were like, let's start at the top because it's a hard road going up like that. So I was like, let's just go straight to Mr. Porter, who were new at the time. It was an offset of Net-a-Porter.
Yeah.
It was all like high-end men's clothes, and they didn't have a grooming section. I approached them and said, hey, what do you think?
Yeah.
They kind of liked the idea. We flew over to New York. Amy was like, my wife, who's the CEO still. She was like 36 weeks pregnant. Had to get special permission to fly to New York.
Wow.
And then flew over, met the buyers, and they loved it. They kind of signed us up on the spot, which was cool. Weirdly, man, and this was a lucky thing, right? You can cut this out if you want because it's a bit of a sidetrack, but it's like some of the luck that was in there was crazy.
Yeah.
The day before, I had a mate that worked at Mr. Porter. And the day before the meeting, the buyer's meeting, I met with him, right, and had a coffee, and I showed him the products and gave him one.
Yeah.
And they are a little bit weird to open if you've never seen it before.
Of course,
it takes people a little bit to figure it out, unless you tell them. Anyway, I showed this guy the product, and he was like, "Fuck, man, it's cool, yeah." And then, anyway, we had the buyers meeting, and they loved it. But then the big boss, so his name was David Olson. He was the VP of Net-a-Porter, so he's like the big boss.
Right.
He came into the meeting because it was the first grooming brand that they'd done. I think they wanted to kind of check it all out.
Yeah.
And he goes, man, I love it. Like, we're ready to go. We'll sign you guys up. Like, this is going to be good. Because it was way more expensive than everything else.
Yeah.
It was design heavy. It was performance heavy.
Yeah.
Like, it smelt good. We kind of pushed everything to 11 with it.
Yeah.
And there was nothing like it. And it still really isn't. Anyway, then he goes, man, but the only thing is, it's a nightmare to open.
Yeah.
And he goes, I'll tell you what, we'll go downstairs, and if someone can open it, you're in. And I was like, fuck. So all right. So we kind of went, me and Amy walked down the stairs, and as we walked down the stairs, the guy that I met for a coffee the day before walked around the corner. Yeah. David threw him the product and goes, Dan, open this.
Yeah.
And he just went, oh, cool. And I was like, God, no. I didn't say anything. Yeah. And he goes, oh, wow, what is it? And then opened it and clicked it open. And the guy was like, you lucky bastard. And then that was it. And then we launched with Mr. Porter, and they were like, send us a line sheet and, let's do it. And then we got in the lift and we were like, holy shit, what's a line sheet?
Yeah,
we had no idea, just no clue, man. No idea at all. And then, but then that's where I don't know if you'd call it clever, but that's when the strategy sort of worked, right? Because once you got Mr. Porter, they're like the purveyors of what's cool. They used to be anyway. Then you get Selfridges. Once you get Selfridges, you get Harrods. Once you get Harrods, you get Harvey Nicks. Yeah. Once you get Harvey Nicks, you get and blah, blah, blah. And the list goes on. Now we've got Browns and Brown Thomas and, Liberty. There's like a whole bunch of retailers. And then that worked in the US as well. So we launched with Barney's over there. Yeah. That went really crazy. And then Barney's closed, and because we were in Barney's, then Bergdorf grabbed it. Right. And then because you're in Bergdorf, you get Saks, and because you're in Saks, you get Nordstrom, because you get Nordstrom, and the list goes.
Cascades, yeah.
Yeah. And all of that, the department stores are great, and it's pretty surreal to walk in and see this little thing that you've created. Like yesterday, man, I went into Harrods, right? It's like Harrods. It's so cool for me, being from Sydney, and it's an institution, whether you love it or hate it. Yeah. It's Harrods. Yeah. And you go in, and all of a sudden there's this massive men's floor that's just sick, and then there's Chanel and everything else, and Prada, and then Patrick's.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, you're in that league now, man.
Yeah. But for us, it's still a bit of a spin out.
You're gonna pinch yourself, yeah.
Yeah. To be in a store like that is cool.
Okay.
And then what that does is gives you credibility then to sell online, which obviously everyone knows the margins are so much better. I have to give pretty hefty margins to resellers. And then that takes a big sort of cut out of us. Whereas if we sell direct to consumer, then it's much better for us.
But tell us then, actually, why did you partner with Humanery? So you started with all these top brands, and you're in Harrods. You're right. It's an institution. So what made you think actually what these guys would do something differently?
Man, it was you.
Was it?
Yeah, to be honest. Yeah. And I don't know. I feel like you get after it, and I feel
Yeah.
like I can tell in 10 seconds if someone's going to do it or not.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's not that many people that I meet that really get after it, if that's the right term, you know what I mean? And give a fuck and get into it and know what they're doing.
Right.
And I got that vibe from you. We had I don't know if you remember, we had a cup of coffee and a lunch.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
You described the concept, and then you started working with other people that I knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I just like the idea, and I like the branding, and more than that, you, man. I thought you
That's very kind of you
I
to
thought
say.
you were a bit of a one percenter. So I was like, let's
Glad
do it,
to hear
give it a
it.
shot.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
And we
for
are
that.
like, we are particular about who we stock.
Yeah, of course.
the
Yeah,
brand
you
with.
guys are very selective. Yeah,
We are,
You
yeah,
can't
yeah.
find Patrick's everywhere.
No,
Yeah.
you can't. Yeah, and that has a whole other reason. You know, like that's not us being arrogant or like we're making so much money that we choose where we go and where we don't. That's certainly not the case. It was more that like, you know, and I reluctantly tell people this because I don't want them to think that I'm not in it for the right reasons. You know what I mean? Like I've been working on this for 10 years.
Yeah, it's a long
time.
time.
And I love
yeah.
it. I don't
Yeah.
want to sell it.
Yeah.
But I do have investors. I've got
Yeah.
to give those guys some kind of return at some stage.
Yeah.
So I need to create what they call like a liquidity event or a liquidity
of course,
point,
yeah.
where, you know, someone bigger might come in and buy those guys out. But for me, so then it becomes like looking through through a different lens at our business. So I always, you know, if someone's starting a business, I always tell people to like start with the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So start with the last stage.
Yeah.
So for us, it would be like a trade sale. So it'd be like, okay, who's going to buy us? When are they going to buy us? Who have they bought before? What multiples did they pay? What are they looking for? What's the gap?
Yeah.
You know, what do I want if I'm that guy looking in at a transaction like ours? So ours is probably realistically going to be like a trade sale to, you know, one of the bigger players.
Bigger players, yeah.
And they might not buy the whole thing. They might just buy our guys out. It might be a VC. It might be PE. Who knows?
Yeah.
Or it might just become really big and, you know, it's getting bigger now, and it might be like a dividend thing where we just keep doing what we're doing and we give our guys a dividend, and that's enough to keep them happy.
Nice.
But for the bigger guys, it would be like, all right, you'd probably want something in men's because it's the fastest growing. I mean, it's never going to catch women's on revenue.
Yeah.
You'd probably
Well,
want...
you'd be surprised. Maybe it will. Who knows?
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
To be seen.
Yeah.
Half the world's population is men, so...
It is. But traditionally, it's like the numbers are there now, right? And the men's stuff is climbing, but we'll see. Like, I hope it does.
Yeah.
But then,
I'm telling you it will.
Yeah. But yeah, you want something that's probably like men's. I like, and it's an easy sell to a business like that because it's, you know, it's more niche, it's fast growing, blah blah blah. That's kind of the stuff they want to hear. Then it's like we're kind of in the luxury space, so the margins are generally good.
Yeah.
And then you want something that's got like the best retailers around the world, but not too many. So that's the trick.
Right.
So then if they buy it for, say, I don't know, whatever the number is, say it's $100 million, which would be great. I can show how it's worth 200 to them, like in the next 12 months.
Yeah.
Because they can bash it out into all of their current things. It might be Sephora, it might be duty free, it might be, you know, whatever they can get. Then they can, like a L'Oreal could go into salons.
Yeah.
You know, they've got this huge network of salons around the world, which no one's in. And we get asked all the time to put the products into salons, but we just don't do it.
Yeah.
And because of that reason, it's sort of like, I've got to be careful with that.
I think that makes
mess
sense.
Up the long shot. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's very sensible. We're gonna change gears a bit and talk a bit about specifically the products which make Patrick's what it is.
Yeah.
And you started with your hero product, which was SH1.
Yeah.
And now it's turned into SH Plus as well. What makes it special, and what is different about SH1?
Well, man, I was telling you the truth. It was my least favorite product.
Okay, let's double click on that.
Yeah,
why is it your least
yeah,
favorite?
yeah.
But why do people love it so much?
Well, this is the thing, right? So, like, we developed it in the store, and when we were developing the shampoos and conditioners originally, so there was only 2. So everything we tried to keep super simple. So the hair care, like the styling stuff, just to backtrack one sec, was... you know, guys would never remember forming creams, fibers, defining paste, pomades, and all this shit.
It's pretty commoditized.
They're never going to remember that stuff.
Yeah.
And they used to come in the store and they'd be like, "Yo, Pat, I need to buy some products," and be like, "Cool, man. Do you want a brand?" And they'd be like, "Oh, fuck, I don't know." And like, "Do you remember what color it was?" And they'd be like, "It was like blue or green, I think."
Yeah.
I had no clue, right? So I quickly say to them, "Do you like matte or shiny?" And they'd be like, "Matte." Like light, medium, strong. Be like, "Medium." Be like, "Cool, take this."
Right.
So we've got M1, M2, M3,
yes.
S2.
Yeah.
M for matte, S for shiny, 1, 2, 3, light, medium, strong. So you
Yeah.
can't really mess it up. And then get back into the shampoos, right? The main, like I'd see these walls of shampoo, and it'd just be like, whoa, like there's really only two differences. Guys have like thinner hair or thicker hair.
Yeah.
And if you've got thinner hair, you want something that's like volumizing and thickening and stops it falling out.
Yeah.
And if you've got really thick hair, you want like a really like with loads of cleansing agents to
Right.
get out big, thick, heavy products that,
Right.
you know, like I use a clay in my hair, which is
Yeah.
designed to be water resistant, right? So you can go to the gym, you can swim, you can do all that.
Yeah.
Then if you have a shower, it's designed not to come out.
Right.
So you have to wash it
You
out.
really have to like scrub
Exactly.
it.
Yeah. But guys that have thinner or lighter hair, probably they don't need all those cleansing agents.
No.
Right? They just want to thicken it up and stop
exactly.
it falling out.
Yeah.
Which is the majority of guys.
And what are the actives in the SH1 that help with it not being as thin anymore, reduces or slows down?
Yeah, so there's two
hair loss?
sides. There's like a cosmetic thickener, which just basically attaches to the hair shaft
Right.
and pushes away from the other one, so it makes your hair look thicker.
Right.
And that will eventually wash out or wear out.
Yeah.
And then on the hair loss side of things, so we use like DHT blockers like
Yeah.
Redenzel and Capixul and
Yeah.
Palmetto and
Yeah.
there's a million kind of things on that side of it.
Yeah.
We can only use it to a sort of certain level. And then eventually you need a script from a doctor because it becomes a medical thing.
Right.
So that's where you get into like finasterides and minoxidil and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But Redenzel and Capixul are phenomenal, and we use those at the suggested rate. So what you could do is, if you were another brand, you could put in maybe like 0.01% and claim that it's hair loss, but it's not going to do anything because it's not tested at that. So they will run the clinicals at like 2%, right? So
Right.
and then you get the clinical data that is that 80% of guys had a noticeable difference, or whatever the stat may be.
Yeah.
But if you don't run it at that percentage, then you can't claim it, right? Well,
Right.
you can claim it, but you've got nothing to back it up.
Yeah.
So it's a weird kind of grey
So
area.
what's the percentages in the SH1 currently?
SH1 is about 2,
Okay.
somewhere between 2 and 2.5,
And SH plus?
5.
5. So it's like
As far as we
souped
can
up.
go.
It's like it's
Yeah.
It's
So
like
you're not allowed to use any more than 5.
Right.
So it's 5 plus everything else. So everything's at max levels.
Yeah.
But it's expensive.
Yeah.
It's like
Expensive to make, but also expensive to buy.
both. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's a reason for it. It's
Yeah.
expensive because it
It's
works.
by far our fastest selling product. But SH1, I get back to the reason why I didn't
Yeah.
like it. So we were testing it, right? And I've got thick hair.
Yeah.
So I was just like, it's shit. It makes my hair too like thick, and
Yeah.
I just didn't like it
Yeah.
because it wasn't right for
It
my
wasn't
hair.
right for you. Yeah.
But every single guy we tested it on loved it.
Yes.
And Amy and everyone else were like, this will be our biggest seller for sure.
Yeah.
And I was like, no way, it's shit. And I didn't really even like the smell of it.
Yeah.
But other people just, like, we tested on so many people, and instantly it became our biggest seller.
Yeah.
And still, it kind of still is. It just keeps doing its thing. We won a bunch of awards with it as well, which we didn't even know that it had been entered into. And Hearst, or like Esquire,
Yeah.
do this grooming awards thing. But they have a Hearst lab, right?
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
test like hundreds and hundreds and
Correct.
hundreds
Yes.
of shampoos.
Yeah.
And we had no clue that they were doing it. And we've won it now 3 years in a row, which is
Fantastic.
cool. So that gives you the credibility of like, and it sort of tells people that I'm not bullshitting when I say that we pushed the limits with
Yeah.
the performance side of it.
Yeah.
And then you get a lab that analyzes it and says, yeah, they actually did. And
Yeah.
here's how and why it works.
Yeah.
But so SH1, it's a funny one. And I sort of joke around when I say that I hate it. Like, I love, obviously, it's one of our best selling products, but it's just not right for my hair.
Yeah.
But for the masses,
So for a guy
Everyone loves it.
with thinning hair like mine, like I'm losing my hair and it's
yeah,
thinning.
like everyone.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
a lot of guys, yeah, of course, yeah. So the SH1, what it does for me, as you say, is makes my hair definitely feel thicker.
Yep.
And I have noticed actually a reduction in hair fall.
Yeah.
But that's come after consistent use for at least 6 months.
Yeah.
And I've tried other hair loss shampoos, and I don't think
Yeah.
I've seen the same results. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's just the actives, man.
Just the
There's
actives.
nothing crazy
Yeah.
to it. Like,
Yeah.
and it's no secret. It's all on our website.
Yeah.
All the clinicals are there. But if you use those ingredients at those levels, you will get
You
result.
should see a result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not everyone. I mean,
Yeah.
no one could claim that it's like 100% results.
Yeah.
But it just sort of has to work. Like it basically cleans off the DHT that's attached to the bottom of the hair shaft.
Yeah.
So then, it's not rocket science, really. I mean, it kind of is, but it's not really
Yeah.
if you explain it in layman's terms.
Yeah.
Once the hair has then got rid of all the DHT at the bottom, it can just grab the nutrients and blood and everything it needs to grow, and it becomes
Correct.
thicker and healthier and less
Exactly
likely
right.
to fall out.
Yeah, exactly right.
So you have more of it, and the hair that you do have becomes healthier and stronger. Usually it goes a little bit darker after about 3 or 4 weeks. And it's like we get a lot of
Just
that
because it's getting
feedback.
more nutrients, it's growing
Yeah.
more
It's like
naturally.
at the bottom of the hair where it sort of sucks everything in, I guess, in
Yeah.
layman's terms, gets a nice clean. So everything's open again, and
Yeah.
it can just get more of everything that it needs to.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that simple, but that's That's the easy way to explain it.
I think that's actually why probably it is such a top seller, because it does what it says in the tin.
And it works straight away.
It works.
You know, like and it's the other sort of thing that I wanted it to be, right? Like I always wanted it to be. Well, I didn't want it to be a hair loss brand, and I know that sounds sort of crazy, but it wasn't very sexy, right? Like, and especially in the past, like. I guarantee if you had a girl coming over, or a guy coming over, or someone coming over, you'd probably hide your Regain and your Rogaine and all that shit and finasteride pills. And it's not something you want to tell people about, right? It's still a bit embarrassing or whatever.
It is, yeah.
And for most guys, you know, some people say, you know, it might be like, you know, I don't care, but the majority probably do.
Yeah.
But I wanted to create something that looked, that sort of like, if someone did come into your bathroom, they weren't thinking, oh, fuck, this guy's going bald. More, oh, this guy must be doing it right, because that stuff's like the real deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was the philosophy of it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't say hair loss on it. Like now with our packaging, we barely even have our logo on it. Most of it we don't.
It just says SH1 in bold, which I think is amazing.
So it's just like a code, and the code was again more because there's a lot of psychology behind that, where men generally remember letter number sequences better than a word.
Yeah.
Whereas women are a lot, you know, obviously a lot smarter than us.
Yeah.
And they can remember long form sentences and paragraphs like with ease, and most guys can't, you know. So that's
really smart.
Yeah, that's why there was the letter number combo, and so people could remember it. So you'd say to people like, "Oh, do you remember what styling product?" Yeah, I think it was like M. You'd be like, "Yeah, cool. Was it light, medium, strong?" They're like, "No, it was 2. It was number 2."
Yeah. Oh,
like, M2. There you go.
Yeah.
So there's no like, because it was based on kind of like a fiber.
Yeah.
Like kind of. It was sort of originally the benchmark was American Crew Fiber, Kevin Murphy's Knight Rider, and another American Crew one called Defining Paste. And it was sort of a mix of those three. So I'd give those, and that's how you develop it. So if anyone wants to know how do you develop a product, I don't mix up all the stuff myself at home. You take those to a lab and you say, hey, I like this about this, I like this about that, I don't like this about this, but this is cool. And then they will basically make you a formula. And then you test it, give feedback, and then you add fragrance and everything else. All your other actives. And then you got to do stability for a long time. To make sure it doesn't separate or, you know, there's a lot more to it than that. But that's kind of the basics of it.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about skincare a bit, because you started with hair, and then of course now skincare has become massive.
It has. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions. First question is, from your perspective, is skincare for men different than skincare for women?
Nah, and that's how it all kind of sprang about. Like weirdly, so remember I was saying the packaging company that we use is in Chicago. So whenever you work with this packaging company in Chicago, you get to stay. They give you a corporate rate at the Four Seasons. I don't know if you've ever been there. The Four Seasons is like
Chicago, yes,
amazing. You know, like it's the best hotel. And Amy and I were there for like one meeting, and we're like, "Fuck it, let's just stay for a week." You know what I mean? Because it's $200 a night, instead of probably $2,000. With
your corporate rate,
So it's cheap. And again, like we don't have much money now, but we didn't have much money then either. And we're on investors' money and all that kind of stuff. So, like, let's stay for a week and just have a bit of a holiday out of it. Anyway, I went to the sauna on the last day, because it's amazing, right? You can imagine how good it is at the Four Seasons. Like it's huge as well. It's like bigger than this whole room. And this is a big room if you're watching.
Exactly.
There's lots of behind the camera. But anyway, I was sitting in there by myself for maybe like 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes, and I was not far off getting out. Anyway, this guy cruised in and literally sat right next to me, like way closer than you and I. Not a stitch on. You know, like our legs were touching, and I was like, hey man, how are you? And he's like, yeah, good. And we started talking. Anyway, I said to him, I was like, mate, how good's the Four Seasons? And he goes, yeah, I know. And I was like, what about that? Did you see that new Ferrari out the front? And he goes, the 599. And I was like, yeah, the black one. And he goes, yeah. He goes, that's mine. I was like, what? I was like, man, you must have been one of the first guys in the world to get one. This is how long ago it was. 599 was new. And he goes, yeah. He goes, I was actually one of the first 10 in America. And I was like, fuck, cool. I was like,
who are you, man?
Yeah, I was like, what do you do? And he said, I'm a neurosurgeon kind of by profession, or a neuroscientist, whatever you call it. But he said, look, I've been working for Harvard, all the different universities, and then he said, and now I work for Bridgewater, which is Ray Dalio. It's like the biggest hedge fund in the world. And he said I do a lot of their sort of due diligence and work on their bio sort of stuff, and all that kind of thing. And I was like, fuck, cool, man. And he goes, what about you? And I said, oh, look, I'm just about to launch this like kind of luxury men's hair care brand, I guess you'd call it. And he was like, oh, cool. And he goes, do you know what? He's like, I was always thinking of doing like a women's skincare line, because we develop all this stuff with the labs, and a lot of the stuff they were doing was transporting organs, right? So like if you get hit by a bus or something, rather than putting it on ice and you only get, half an hour, whatever it might be to get the organ to someone before it degrades too much, they were working on these solutions to try and get the organ to last longer. So they could put it on a plane or get it to a kid on the other side of the city or whatever.
Yeah.
But he said basically it's just all anti-aging. And I was like, fuck, cool, man. I was like, Women's Day, I was like, tough game, man. That's where the big girls and the big boys play. You need a lot of money and time. And I was like, I'm never negative about that sort of stuff, but it'd be hard work. And he goes, yeah, I know. That's sort of why I haven't done it. And I said, why don't you do like a really high-end men's one? Yeah. And he goes, fucking good idea. Yeah. And I was like, would it work the same on our skin as their skin? He's like, man, it's pretty much exactly the same. Yeah, there's not really any difference. And I was like, cool. And he goes, tell you what, he goes, want to go halves in it? He goes, you do all the sort of branding side of it. I'll do the back-end stuff and we'll go from there. And I was like, hell yeah, let's do it. So we like high-fived and sucked each other off, and then that was it. I'm joking. We didn't high-five. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
But then he invested in the business. He's become one of my great friends. Worth his weight in gold. Yeah. So that was the smartest guy I've ever met.
That's the birth of the AM1.
Yeah. Well, that sort of spawned the idea of skincare.
Right.
So we'd only just started the hair care at that point.
Right.
And then we had the same trouble again at getting a lab. We just couldn't get a lab to develop the skincare at the level that we wanted to do it with Matt, who's the neuroscientist guy. But eventually I wore down Bentley Labs in New Jersey. I wore them down for 6 months with voicemails and emails and eventually got to know I knew the lady was called Kathy, right, who ran the whole thing. So it was a husband and wife team, Kathy and Brian, who I'm now really good friends with. But at the time, someone just said, the lady who owns it's called Kathy Fitzpatrick. And I was like, right, and I'm sure she won't mind me saying her name. But anyway, there's like an info at, and that's it. There's nothing else.
That's all you know.
But they don't reply, they don't answer calls, because they get you can imagine how many people, especially in the States, that want to like make a brand, that never get to market. So I get it, but like I felt like I had something good. So I just rang, emailed all the time, tried every variation of like K Fitzpatrick, Kathy Fitzpatrick, Kathy dot Fitzpatrick, underscore, you name it. And eventually after a few months, I got an out of office. And I was like,
you found it.
Yeah. So then, I was always sweet, I was always nice with it. I was like, hey, I'm so sorry about all the emails. And it wasn't like every day. Yeah. But I was like, I really do have something cool here and I'd love you guys to do it because, arguably you're the best lab in the States and blah, blah, blah. And then because I was ringing so much, I became friendly with the lady who was on the front desk. And then she was telling me that she was going on vacation and I was like, sweet. And then, as she went on vacation, there was a temp on the desk. And I was like, oh, hey, how are you? Is Kathy there? I'm good friends with her. Can you just put me through for a sec? Yeah. She did. And I was like, hello, Kathy. And I was like, hey, Kathy, it's Patrick. How are you? I was like, just give me 5 seconds. She's like, oh, my God. She's like, you're persistent. I'll give you that. Yeah. And then she said, look, I've read all your emails. I love the idea. Can you be in New York next week? And I was in Sydney. And I was like, yeah, done. See you there. So it was a Wednesday. So I rang Matt, the professor. Yeah. And just said, mate, he was in Connecticut, which was only just around the corner. Can you come and meet me at the lab? And we that's kicked it all off. Bentley invested in the business after the first meeting. At the end, Kathy and Brian said, oh, can we talk to you for a minute? Yeah. And I was thinking, oh, fuck, here we go. They're going to like pull me across the coals for like calling and emailing so much and being a pain in the ass. And they were like, look, we love what you do. We've actually set up a certain section of the lab where they focus more on developing new stuff as opposed to reformulating, which the majority of stuff is reformulations, right? So most brands will take a product to someone like them and say, can we make something similar to this, but for cheaper? Right. So that's like the general thing. Whereas they had this other section of the lab, which was more kind of futuristic.
Start from scratch.
Yeah. Discovering new things, trying new things. And because that's kind of the ethos of our brand, I guess we like to be kind of right at the pointy end. Yeah. They were like, it just fits that model perfect. So we can create some really cool shit. And they're like, on the back of that, can we invest in the brand? And I was like, yeah, done. So they gave us a big check too, which was cool, as well as made all the products. Yeah. And became great friends. And Kathy and Brian, a husband and wife team, sort of like Amy and I. Yeah. So there's a real kind of synergy there. And then literally maybe a year and a half ago, I got them the introduction and sold the business for them. I didn't sell the business, but they who wanted to buy it, and they paid them hundreds of millions.
Incredible.
Yeah, they're lots of hundreds of millions too.
Lots of hundreds of millions. We
Yeah,
like
yeah.
lots
So
and
they
lots of-
they're now kind of retired, I guess. They're still
Wow.
pretty young, but so it all kind of came around.
yeah.
Yeah. But that's how the skincare kind of started. And it was with the ethos of like, again, keeping everything really simple. And I find like simplicity and efficiency for guys is the key, right? Like
Absolutely.
but the thing is with guys, I think, and being one, and knowing a lot of them, is that they're very loyal to products, right? Like, you know, the guy behind the camera, everyone else, like that may be listening, has probably been using the same shit they've been using for 10 years or more. You know what I mean? Guys are very reluctant to try a new product.
Yes.
You know, there's a few exceptions, obviously, everywhere.
Yeah.
But the majority of guys will just find something that works and stick with it forever.
Fair.
And they don't question it as much.
Yeah.
Women are generally a lot more likely to try something new, try a new brand, try a thing that a friend's told them about. You know, they're always happy to try something new, which is great.
Yeah.
But so with that, like, it's hard to get a guy to try something new. But then if you give them something that works really well and they like it, they're so loyal to it.
Yeah.
They'll buy it forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was sort of the ethos behind the development of the stuff. Was like, all right, let's make like a face wash, and not one that you have to squirt in your hand and then sort of emulsify and then put on and then wash, and just all these seemed like, excuse my French, like fuck around steps. It's like, just get some foam. Like, can we do it in a foam?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's already done. You don't even need to wet your face.
Yeah.
You just wipe it on for 30 seconds or whatever, 10 seconds,
Yeah.
2 minutes, whatever you desire.
Yeah.
Rinse it off, or do it in the shower. You don't even have to rinse it off. You just let the shower wash it off.
And that's it.
And that's it. Yeah, yeah. And then, you know, obviously, the other thing that the labs, I think why they invest in us all the time is because we have no budgets on stuff. So people, other brands will generally always say, hey, we need to make, like, I don't know, it might be a sun cream. We need to make it for $2 or less a fill. And so they'll give them a budget, right? Which then hamstrings the developers.
Yes. Yes.
Because it's like, well, fuck, it's, you know, what can you do for $2 that's going to be any good? Like,
Yeah.
our natural deodorant's like the perfect version of that, where
The ND1.
ND1,
ND1,
yeah, and
yeah,
ND2.
yeah.
Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold if you haven't noticed.
Yes.
But yeah, that's like the perfect example of, I won't say names, but there's the biggest natural deodorant in the world by sales is made in Texas in America.
Uh-huh.
And I went to those guys wanting to make a natural deodorant and then having an awkward conversation with them about, like, I love your products, I love what you do or what you make, but it doesn't work. And, you know, like,
What about
as a
it doesn't
guy,
work?
like,
Yeah.
I stank and I sweated
Yeah.
but it's natural, right? So
Yeah.
you're going to take a hit.
Yeah.
Whereas if you use like a Dove or a Rexona or whatever the brands are.
Yeah, the more synthetic.
Yeah.
chemicals,
They're antiperspirant, so you
Yeah.
don't sweat, but they're
Yeah.
full of crazy stuff, man, that
Yeah.
you really shouldn't be spraying under your arms.
Yeah.
And I'm not like a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but
But what is
they're
crazy
not
about it?
great
Just
for
to
you.
double click on that for a sec.
It's like aluminiums and then all the propellants, basically.
Yeah.
So anything to get it out of the can and onto your skin, and then basically blocking your skin for a whole day or 24 hours just isn't good for you, right?
So it's cutting out the flow of whatever into the pores.
And
it can-
yeah. And I'm no expert on exactly, you know, whether it's going to give you cancer or all that kind of stuff. And there's a million things. You Google it, right? And it'll give you a gazillion different variations and answers and stuff. But we knew it wasn't a good idea.
Yeah.
And, you know, the feedback we got, like, everyone was like, come on, guys, make a natural deodorant, you know, knowing that we would push the limits and hopefully do something cool. And we did exactly that. So we had to have an awkward conversation where, like, we love what you guys do, but your product's shit. Which, you know, is a good way to get turfed out of an office.
Yeah.
But then I said, is there any way we can, like, if I gave you guys an open budget, like no expense spared, can we make a product that stops you sweating to a point and you don't stink? And then their chemist, his name's Gajan, like, really cool guy. He was like,
And this is in Texas.
this is in Texas.
Yeah.
And he was like, man, I've got it. I've already got it. And I was like, you serious? And he goes, yeah, I've had it for like 18 months. It's called Neodor. And again, no secret, right? Like, I don't care who uses it because it's good.
Yeah.
It's good for the planet. It's good for, like, if anyone else wants to use it, go for it. It's like, it's a good product.
Yeah.
But it's so expensive. It's like $8 or $9 a fill. Just that ingredient.
What's so
Whereas the
different
other
about Neodor?
competitive product was 25 cents a fill for the whole thing.
Jesus Christ, that's like
So you can see
over,
as a percentage.
over 100x, yeah.
Yeah. Way over.
Well, what makes so? What
But
makes
then I
it so
said to him,
different?
like, man, make one. Just make one. Can you
Yeah.
make me one?
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, I've already got one. Like, it's unreal. So then you go through, like, what the base you want, whether you want it to be clay or we need to do this or that and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, look, I'm a guy. I've got hairy armpits. I don't want anything too crazy and sticky, but you tell me. You know, you're the guy. And he made one, and I used it. And like the first time I used it, I was just like, holy shit, it's awesome. I took it to the gym. You know, I went and got really hot and sweaty, went for a run.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. Sometimes do that. Yeah. But just gave it like a proper tryout. And it was amazing. And then we sent it out. So now, because we don't have the salon, we've got like, we call them our test pilots, right? And it's a secret list of like 55 people. And there's movie stars, there's architects, there's like musicians, bankers.
Yeah.
There's a couple of just normal, my mates, you know. And we're pretty secretive about the list, but because we send all these guys new products, right? And some of them have deals with other brands, and you know, it's a heavy hitting list. Yeah, let's say that. But then I sent them all the ND1, the natural deodorant. And again, you're going to have to excuse my French, and you can bleep it out. But this is the feedback, right? Every single guy was pretty much like, "Holy fuck, man, this is awesome." Yeah, like just across the board.
Yeah, I use it every day.
But it was way more expensive to make. And then you got to do 5,000, I think it was a 10,000 as a minimum. So then, you know, the product was way more than the $8 or $9 because that's just for the one ingredient. Then you've got everything else on top of it, then the packaging, then the outer packaging, and then it quickly adds up. So then it forced the product to be like $60 retail, which is expensive for a natural.
In the UK, for those who are watching and listening, it's £38.
Yeah, which I know is expensive. Yeah. But it's an amazing product, and it lasts for a long time. So it's not like, you know, it should last you 3 to, 5 months at least. And that's if you're using it daily.
I use it every day.
Yeah. So do I. Yeah.
But tell me this, so just for those who are interested, what is Neodor and why is it so special?
So it's like I don't know like everything about it, but it's an antibacterial. So then that stops the smelling.
That's what's the bacteria is what typically causes
Yeah. Because there's like heat. And
the body
sweat.
odor,
Yeah. And it's sort of, and you're supposed to. That's the other thing is like, you can't forget.
That's natural.
It's evolution, right? Yeah. You're supposed to sing. It's why you've got hairs under your arms and why you've got pubes and things smell. They're designed to keep smells in to then, attract the opposite sex or whatever you're into these days. So that's like, they've got a form, like they've got a function, for what they do. But, you can't go around stinking these days. It's just not the way it is. Yeah. And it's a strange product, man. Like the first time I used it, I was sort of like, whoa. It clogs up your hair. It's not like a spray.
It's got a bit
of
a...
I'd say to guys like, you'll probably use too much the first day, maybe not enough the second day. Yeah. And then after a week, you'll just have it dialed in and you'll be used to it and you won't go back to it. Everything else will be weird after that.
Yeah. It feels a bit like a hairstyling product.
It does, It
does actually.
Well, it's a similar base.
It's a similar base,
Yeah. And that reduces the perspiring.
That's what it is.
Got it. But you don't want to do it too much where you don't sweat because then it's kind of like, might as well put sticky tape under your arms or something. You know what I mean? It's not good for you.
Yeah. All right.
But then we did another version of that just recently. So we got ND2, which is the same formula but just a different fragrance. Okay. That was a little tribute to my dad, and I'll probably get sued. But he always, for his whole life, he's like 72. He's always worn Dior Eau Sauvage. That's like his fragrance. Yeah. And it just reminds me of him. Yeah. That was a little tribute to Dad, so I made it smell like.
Love that.
Dior.
So inspired.
Yeah. And now we've just done a sensitive one.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does that do?
It basically like some of the it doesn't have it's not as high performance as the other one.
Okay.
But it's much better for sensitive skin.
Gotcha.
So if anyone gets like any irritation or redness and it's very few people. But there are other people out there like that. So we thought, well, we can do it. We've got the base, we've got the formula. Yeah. We know it works. Yeah. So and we tested it out, and I actually really like it. It's a really good product. It doesn't have a fragrance. Yeah. It's got its own kind of smell, but it's very subtle. Yeah. So there's a few little differences, but again, it just gives, there's people out there that, get irritated under their armpits.
Yeah.
Like, let's see if we can make something for them.
Yeah.
We did the same thing with a soap. Yeah. So we've made like a sensitive soap plus a normal soap as well. And like our face scrub, the one that kind of got us all the press and everything, it's got diamonds in it. Yeah. And everyone just thought we were being wankers by putting diamonds in a face scrub.
The FS1.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But again, it wasn't for like media attention, or it wasn't for like trying to be cool or whatever. It was, the brief to the lab was like, can we make, every face scrub that I used from other brands, and I won't say who, but there's some big hitting brands out there that make face scrubs, but the particles were so big. You know what I mean? I felt like they were kind of scratching my face. Yeah. And man, I used to be a tradesman, right, for a long time. So I know that if you want to get something smooth, you use like a fine grit sandpaper.
Correct.
You know,
Yes.
or if you want to get a load of bulk off, you use a big, thick, heavy
Yeah,
grit.
yeah, yeah.
And if you want something really smooth, which you want your skin to be smooth,
Yeah.
then you use like a fine grit. Pardon me. So I said to the lab, what's like the hardest, finest material that we can use in this? Thinking along the lines of like sandpaper
Yeah.
to then put into the scrub to make your skin smooth. And they were like, well, it'd probably be like crushed diamond. And it's not like diamonds in your jewelry and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
It's more like industrial diamonds. They make
Yeah.
drill bits and all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff out of it. And then volcanic sand was the other thing. So it's a really hard, fine.
Where does that
sand.
volcanic sand come from?
I had no idea.
Yeah.
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 Don't know. The lab sources all that stuff. So they do all that for you.
Yeah.
So some of the things like, I don't know, you can't know everything about everything. It's just too much. 'Cause,
Yeah.
You know, running the business and raising money and,
Yeah.
you know, millions
Building
of
the
stuff
brand,
and
yeah, yeah.
websites and,
Yeah.
you know, you got to know a little bit about a lot. So with all the sort of really technical stuff of the formulas, I just leave that up to the experts. You know, these guys are
And these are some of the best labs in the world.
by far.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Ladove and Bentley.
Open budget.
Yeah, and they love that, right? It's like saying to an architect, you know, I want you to change the skyline of New York. So every architect's going to freak out, right? And be like, yes.
Yeah.
And they're going to put way more effort into it than, hey, I need you to design a, you know, dog kennel out the back of my house.
Yeah.
It's going to be like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
They get no money for it. It's a dog kennel. No one's going to see it.
That's
you know
a
what I
great
mean?
philosophy,
So
yeah.
but that's
But it's
what
also a
happens
hard
with
thing to achieve because actually, you know, giving someone an open budget isn't necessarily the easiest thing financially. As
Nah, but what it does is it gets the chemist or the engineer or whoever's doing it to really, and again, excuse my French, give a fuck.
Yeah.
So it makes
and
them
that's the
care.
most important ingredient. Yeah.
So then they put like, they'll do more time, more research, and they'll make that formula kind of bang on. And my thing is to all of them, and especially like this SHCD plus thing that's gone crazy.
Yeah.
Is you know, like I want to see it sitting on your shelf at the end of the day to be like, this was the best face scrub or whatever the product was I could make in 2022.
Yeah.
We actually, I'll tell you in a minute if you've got
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah, of
the,
course,
the
yeah.
story about like we made as a concept like the best moisturizer on earth, and never sold it. I still got it. I've never opened it. Never used it.
It's like a fine bottle of whiskey that just sits there.
Yeah. But the thing for that was to get a lab that we hadn't used before to give them a good test out and to see if they wanted to work with us in the future, and they have done.
Okay.
We did all the Batman stuff with those.
Let's leave that for the next time that we see each other in the podcast. So let's talk about the best moisturizer on the planet the next episode.
Yeah.
But okay, so we're gonna.
I might give it away on the next one.
Oh yeah, you should. You should have like a special winner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone that wants to join the top 55 test pilots.
Yeah, it was
maybe.
only 20 grand.
Oh,
for one
okay.
tub.
Okay, all right, there you go. 20 grand for
Yeah,
free
yeah,
next
yeah.
time. Okay, all right. Well, Patrick, thanks so much for being on Grooming with Humanery.
Yeah, thanks for having
it was a
me,
great
man.
chat, man. It was really fun. And for all of you that have been watching this episode, listening to this episode, hope you've actually benefited from some of Patrick's advice. We hope you will like, subscribe, and share this episode. There's a lot more to come. Hopefully, we'll be having you on this episode again on the
For
show
sure,
again in
yeah,
the
yeah,
future. But yeah, it was really fun and some really good advice, and so lovely to hear more about your brand and how it came about. What an inspiring story.
Yeah, man, and thanks for supporting us. I mean, you guys
Of course,
are almost like our biggest seller globally now.
Well,
It's amazing.
we need to become the biggest
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. As soon as
We're
I
not
give
too
you
far
some
from
more
it.
stock,
Yeah, please
I mean,
do.
You guys are there, but no, I do appreciate it, and I love what
All
you
right,
guys
man.
do.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, Patrick. Thank you. I really appreciate it. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks, and see you again in the next episode.